The film begins by showing a bunch of bad guys breaking into a British government lab and being really mean to the scientists there just to steal some super cool technology. Then, a really important British military guy named Knighton decides to send a special agent named Nathan to get back the stolen stuff and figure out why these bad guys want it so bad. At that time, Nathan also talks about his plan to put together a team for this mission. The first person he mentions is a guy named Orson. But Knighton doesn't seem too happy about it because Orson is known for spending a lot of money on his missions, like flying on private jets and drinking expensive wine. However, Nathan says Orson is the only one who can handle really tough missions. Right now, though, Orson is on vacation in Morocco, so Nathan will meet up with him later. The next day, Orson seemed annoyed when he found Nathan in his hotel room, but they're actually good friends. Nathan explained the new mission to Orson and introduced the rest of the team. They were Sarah, a female hacker, and JJ, Orson's assistant. There, Nathan convinced Orson that JJ was a talented guy with all the skills they needed. To get things moving, they picked up Orson in Morocco and flew to Madrid on a private jet, while Sarah and JJ got there ahead of them. However, Orson preferred their old hacker, John, because Sarah talked a lot. At the airport, they started their mission. Soon, they spotted a guy who had stolen stuff from the lab the day before. They planned to retrieve the stolen goods and follow the guy to find out who the criminal was going to sell the technology to. For this mission, Nathan hired 2 more agents. But during a mission, these 2 agents got knocked out by someone they didn't know. Surprisingly, even Sarah, who hacked into the airport's cameras, didn't notice this happening. It turns out Orson has a rival mercenary agent named Mike, and he and his team were the ones responsible for it. Mike also wants the same package thereafter. Luckily, Orson and JJ figured this out in time. When Mike's guys almost took the package from the old man carrying it, Orson and JJ stopped them. However, Mike's men continued to follow their car. So Nathan tried to copy the data from the hard disk in the suitcase, but it was locked, and they were running out of time. Finally, Mike and his men blocked their way. At that moment, the old man asked Nathan to take the hard disk to a cafe later that afternoon, or his wife would be in danger. Long story short, Nathan went to the cafe as requested. Soon, an unknown man took the suitcase he had left there. Sarah used her hacking skills to find out that the buyer was a lawyer named Harris, who worked for an illegal weapons dealer named Greg. Upon hearing that, Orson was familiar with that name. After some investigation, they found out that Greg was hosting a special charity event for rich people in another city. To get Greg's attention, Orson and Sarah secretly made a plan without telling Nathan. Surprisingly, they first flew to Los Angeles to pick up a famous actor named Danny Francesco, who was Greg's favorite actor. It's even said that Greg admired Danny so much that he offered him $150 billion to come to his birthday, but Danny turned it down. However, Orson and Sarah had a plan to convince Danny to cooperate. Unexpectedly, Sarah found a secret recording as proof that Danny had an affair with his sister-in-law. She also found some faults with Danny's main manager. At first, Danny strongly rejected Orson's offer and acted very arrogantly. But when he found out about the recording of his affair, he immediately agreed. The next day, they all flew to France, and the charity event Greg was hosting took place on a fancy cruise ship. Sarah pretended to be Danny's girlfriend, while Orson acted as Danny's manager. When Greg saw Danny, he was very happy and even bought a $20 billion necklace as a gift. He wanted to start a conversation with Danny. Greg was also known for flirting with famous actors' girlfriends, so he flirted with Sarah, thinking she was Danny's girlfriend. At that moment, their plan when meeting Greg was to hack his phone, but his assistant took the phone to a special room. They were all forced to go in a different direction because Greg wanted to hang out with Danny. At the same time, JJ and Nathan, who were working from their hotel room, started hacking into the ship's security cameras and so on. Unexpectedly, one of Mike's team members showed up at the event, so Orson was sent to deal with him. Meanwhile, Sarah secretly sneaked into the room where Greg's phone was kept. Unfortunately, when Sarah started hacking, Harris noticed her presence. Luckily, she was good at making small talk. At the same time, Orson tried to approach Mike's men and offered a fancy watch if they would leave the mission. But Mike was too arrogant, so Orson gave up on his plan. Then a fight became inevitable, but Orson was much better at fighting than his enemies. On the other hand, Danny told Greg that he would be playing a mysterious billionaire character in his next movie. Greg thought that character sounded like what he did every day. So he invited Danny to his fancy villa to see how he spends his days as a reference. He also invited Sarah to come along. During their conversation, a group of Ukrainian mafia members, led by a guy named Alexander, suddenly showed up. These guys were Greg's clients and big fans of Danny. While they were taking photos together, Greg kept trying to get close to Sarah, but luckily, Orson intervened and ended their mission on the ship. They also managed to hack into Greg and Alexander's conversations. Surprisingly, Alexander and his gang were the ones who stole technology from the lab. Greg was just the middleman, and they still didn't know who the buyer was. At that time, Nathan and Orson also didn't know what kind of technology Alexander had stolen. So Nathan was sent to sneak into Alexander's place and hack their computer. When he got into the enemy's yard, Orson used anesthetic gas to put everyone inside to sleep. Orson was supposed to just hack Alexander's laptop in his safe, but he decided to take the opportunity to steal jewelry and money from their headquarters too. As he was leaving, Orson had to fight two mafia members and Alexander, who wasn't affected by the gas. The next morning, JJ, who had managed to hack Greg's phone the day before, finally got to listen to Greg's conversation with two guys named Trent and Arnold, who were the ones buying the stolen items. However, in their talk, they didn't mention exactly what kind of technology they were buying. They emphasized that the transaction the next day was super secret, so they didn't discuss the location over the phone. That's why Nathan split their team into two groups. First, Sarah and Danny would pretend to be on vacation at Greg's villa to find out what kind of technology would be part of the upcoming deal. Long story short, Sarah and Danny arrived at Greg's fancy villa. They could see that Greg was incredibly wealthy. He even had some super rare luxury cars, including the one Danny was going to use in his latest movie. Danny was really impressed by this. Then, while Danny and Greg were having fun driving around, Sarah secretly hacked into the security cameras in Greg's house and sneaked into his study without being caught. She started hacking into all the files on Greg's computer. Sadly, she didn't find any information about the high-tech transactions. There were only records of deals involving old terrorist weapons. Meanwhile, Orson and JJ were in Turkey, following Alexander, who seemed to be a middleman in the deal. Soon, they spotted Greg's lawyer, Harris, in the same area. There, Orson decided to track Harris. Unfortunately, on the way, Harris figured out that Orson was following him. During the chase, JJ blocked all of Harris's messages and calls, but Orson had a hard time catching him because he was riding a motorcycle. In the end, Harris managed to escape by climbing into a building. Surprisingly, he tricked Orson by putting his cell phone in a tourist's pocket and pushing the tourist from a height. Harris did this to make Orson think that the tourist who fell was him. Then, Harris tried to do the same thing to Orson, but he also fell. In the evening, Nathan got information from Knighton that the stolen technology Alexander took was a super advanced AI. This AI had the power to hack into any system on Earth, including the country's defense system, and even trigger a nuclear attack. Based on the data they got from Harris's phone, the AI transaction was set for the next day. The next morning, some messengers from Alexander were going to pick up Harris from the hotel. So, Orson had to disguise himself as Harris, while JJ secretly put a tracking device on Alexander's men's car and followed them from behind. Soon after, Orson was taken to a special place, and JJ positioned himself to protect Orson from a distance using a sniper rifle. After a while, a representative from Alexander showed up with the stolen AI technology. But they needed a 15-digit keyword that only Greg knew to confirm if it was genuine. So, Orson called Greg to get this keyword. There, Sarah had hacked their phone line and cleverly altered Orson's voice to sound like Harris's. Greg didn't suspect anything, and he still didn't know that Harris had passed away. However, there was a problem because Sarah's hacking alerted one of Greg's computer-savvy subordinates, who realized that their network had been hacked. Fortunately, Greg's team only figured this out after Orson completed the AI transaction. Realizing they were in trouble, Sarah and Danny tried to escape from Greg's villa. Greg ordered his men to chase after them. On the other hand, Orson's cover was blown when one of Alexander's men turned out to be the guy Orson had fought with while robbing Alexander's headquarters the day before. Luckily, JG used his sharpshooting skills to protect Orson. Meanwhile, Orson tried to escape using a car with AI technology that he had taken. At the same time, some unknown troops arrived in helicopters and started attacking everyone at the scene, even destroying the car Orson was driving. Surprisingly, the leader of these troops turned out to be Mike, and he managed to thwart Orson's plan. Shortly after, JJ continued to keep an eye on Orson from a distance and noticed that something was off about Mike's team. Turns out they were also attacking innocent people who worked for Alexander. Mike even ordered his guys to kill Orson before leaving. Fortunately, JJ managed to defeat Mike's men who wanted to harm Orson. Meanwhile, Sarah and Danny were still trying to escape from Greg's troops. They did their best to resist with the limited weapons they had until they managed to make one of the enemy cars fall into a ravine. Soon after, Orson and JJ followed Sarah using a helicopter they took from the enemy. When they arrived, they took down one of Greg's men by firing a missile. Nathan, frustrated because Mike messed up his operation, tried to figure out which country Mike worked for. Unfortunately, he couldn't find out, so he thought that Mike planned to use the AI technology for his own gain. So Nathan came up with a plan to bring Greg on board. Hearing that, Greg agreed to work with them and revealed that Trent and Arnold were actually working with Mike to steal the AI technology. Trent and Arnold wanted to use the AI to disrupt the world's banking system and make all currencies worthless except for gold. They had been buying gold for a long time, so the scheme would make them incredibly rich. At night, Greg and Danny went to the base of Trent and Arnold, who had stolen the package. Mike and his group were also there. Greg cleverly invited everyone to chat and distract them while Orson and JJ started taking action to defeat Mike's troops at the base. Meanwhile, Greg seemed calm, but he was actually very angry with Trent and Arnold for canceling their deal. He showed them what would happen if someone crossed him by blowing up some nearby buildings. Greg also told Danny to hand out a paper with the names and current locations of Trent and Arnold's families. He warned that their families would be in danger if Trent and Arnold didn't pay Greg the commission for the transaction from the day before within 5 minutes. After that, Greg and Danny left casually. While everyone was focused on Greg's threat, Orson was already on his way to confront Mike. At that moment, Trent was really worried because his mother's name was on the list of people Greg threatened. This made him decide to cut ties with Mike. Unfortunately, this decision led to a deadly confrontation between them, and Mike ended up winning. Meanwhile, Orson was in the same building as Mike, but he had to fight the remaining guards. When Orson reached the top, Mike tried to attack him from behind. Luckily, Sarah was using a drone to monitor the room, so she warned Orson in time. Finally, they managed to get hold of the AI technology, and then JJ and Sarah picked up Orson. During this time, Sarah also informed Orson that while they were busy, Nathan had flown to Doha, Qatar, for another urgent mission. Soon after, they all went to Doha to deliver the AI technology to Nathan. There, Nathan seemed pleased, but he quickly mentioned a new mission for them. Orson and his friends, however, declined the offer because they wanted to enjoy their vacation. On a different note, Danny was busy working on his new movie. Surprisingly, he copied Greg's style, and Greg was even on set as the director. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is to thrive in life first, become a master hacker, then dip into some juicy blackmailing, and finally, reward yourself with a well-deserved vacation, because even cyber criminals need a break.